We don't have much time, and it is a beautiful beginning of the week here in Brussels, a very sunny day today. So it's a perfect time to start the week with a discussion on the voluntary sustainability standard for non-listed SMEs. It's really something tailored specifically for non-listed SMEs. And today I have a pleasure to welcome three speakers together with my colleague Stephanie. I welcome to this webinar Saskia Slom, CEO of EFRAG. Elisa will be joining us, Bevilak, who is a Senior Sustainability Technical Manager at EFRAG as well. And we are also joined by Antoine de Martel, Associate Director and Chief Financial Officer at Impact. I'm joined also with my colleague Stefanie Smialowski, policy advisors, who will be later on discussing with the expert speakers and diving inside of this topic of sustainability standard for non-listed SMEs. But before we go to the more detailed discussions, we really are privileged to have Saskia joining us this morning, and I would like to ask you, Saskia, a few questions at the very beginning to give us a kind of like introduction. It is the first time that we are having a debate like this with our constituents. We are Impact Europe, association that represents around 350 organizations. Most of them are capital providers, impact investors looking to invest to generate positive impact in the world. So this is a topic of a high relevance to them. So I would like to welcome you in particular, and I will ask straight away with the very first question to you. Because you have been involved in EFRAG since its establishment in 2001. And I would like to ask you to introduce yourself in your own words. And also you could introduce EFRAG, the organization that you represent, the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group.
Okay. Good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here on the Monday morning with you and to give you a little bit more insight in EFRAG and its activities, and notably on the sustainability reporting activities. So like you said, EFRAG was established in 2001, focusing totally on financial reporting at the time. And myself, at the time, I didn't work at EFRAG, but at Accountancy Europe. Well, it's now called Accountancy Europe. It was called FI at the time. But I had been involved in the establishment from EFRAG from the late 90s, and have ever since been involved in EFRAG and joined actually EFRAG back in 2010. So quite some time ago. So I'm part of the furniture, if you want to call it like that. So EFRAG was established by 10 organizations at the time, financial reporting. So organizations like the banking organizations, EBF, ESBG, ESCB, but also Insurance Europe, also Business Europe, Accountancy Europe, FAS, and I'm forgetting some others because I'm not yet at 10. So how did we come to sustainability reporting? Basically, we went back to sustainability reporting when the Commission asked us in their action plan to do something on good practices in, well, it was not called sustainability reporting at the time, you know, non-financial reporting, and asked us to establish a European lab, a bit in analog to the to the lab that they had in the UK. So we have been doing that. That was our first step back in the reporting. Then, you know, in 2020, the Commission asked us actually to look in, should there be European non-financial reporting standards? And if so, could EFRAG be a body developing those? So we got 2 mandates at the time, and we set up a PTF, and that's sort of where our journey, more detailed journey in sustainability reporting started.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask another question because I paid attention and I noticed that EFRAG was in a way established with organizations which are quite similar to Impact Europe itself. So as a CEO of EFRAG, I think you would be able to give us an overview of the organization and also in what way EFRAG is in a way different to, for example, ESMA as a European financial market regulator or a supervisor? Is there a difference? There is a significant role of EFRAG in policy making and in developing the technical sustainability standard, but could you elaborate, please?
Yeah, so in the IS regulation, EFRAG has the role as technical advisor to the Commission on endorsement of international financial reporting standards. I will not go into detail there because I think it's not a topic of today. But then in the CSRD, we are the technical advisor to the European Commission developing draft European Sustainability Reporting Standards, the ESRS, where we have done the first set in a whole process with the Commission back in 2023, I have to say, sorry. So to be clear, EFRAG is not part of the European institutions. We are actually a separate body. We are, as many organizations in Europe, an ISPL. So in that way, we are totally different, but we are mentioned by the Commission, notably on sustainability reporting. EFRAG is as such mentioned in the CSRD. Now, is it different from ESMA? Yeah, it's very different from ESMA because ESMA is one of the European institutions, but we have close contacts with ESMA, and ESMA actually is involved in our bodies, both on financial reporting and sustainability reporting. They are observers in our sustainability reporting board, also in our sustainability reporting tech, and not only ESMA, but also EBA, EIOPA, the ECB, the Fundamental Rights Association, and the Environmental Association as well. So they're all part as observers and they can give their views. I think the other thing is perhaps relevant to mention, because you said our organizations are probably a little bit the same, is that EFRAG also did a total governance reform, and we had to develop what we call civil society organizations chapters, and we also invited other organizations to join us. So we have now two pillars, one called financial reporting pillar, one sustainability reporting pillar. And so we had about 14, I think, new organizations joining us to have this wider perspective of the European sustainability reporting, because financial reporting is part of the corporate reporting, sustainability reporting is part of it, but the stakeholders are much wider, and we want to be representative of all those stakeholders.
Excellent. Thank you very much for this overview. I noticed that you are in those interactions with other European institutions, so there is a big importance placed on the coherent regulatory framework and to enable you to have those interactions with other institutions. Do you imagine the role of the EFRAG as an organization to be changed or maybe strengthened in the future when developing the sustainability standard, or is it sufficient the role that EFRAG currently has in this domain? You elaborated the role that you have, that you are kind of drafted by the asked by the European Commission to advise them on the standard, to provide a technical advice. How would you see EFRAG's role in the future?
Well, you have to go back to the CSRD, where EFRAG is then the technical advisor. So EFRAG provides draft standards, but then there is a whole process laid down in the CSRD where the Commission has to consult and do all kinds of steps before actually these standards, and they also have to consult with the member states and the Parliament before the standards become really European legislation published in the official journal. So that takes some time. And that only the Commission can do, because the formal standards, also it's the same if level 2 guidance is developed by ESMA or EBA or EIOPA, finally they advise the Commission, and then the Commission have to take the step so that it becomes EU legislation. So I think in that way, our role will not be different. What is important is also in the CSRD that EFRAG has to look at all existing European legislation. So we have to take into account everything that exists, and that's much more than we have perhaps ever expected. So that's one task. But we also have to take into account international developments that are relevant for sustainability reporting. So in that way, I think EFRAG will be an important player at the European scene, but also in the international scene. And actually, we are well acknowledged at the moment as an important player at global level. EFRAG at the moment is chairing an organization called IFAS, the International Organization Forum of Standard Setters, and which is now also dedicated since 1 or 2 years to sustainability reporting. And there we see that EFRAG plays an important role, and people are very interested in other countries to follow or to at least know in detail about ESRS. Because what is particular, of course, peculiar about us, well, about Europe, I would say, is that we have that it has been decided in the CSRD to cover the whole domain, so E, S, and G, whereas we go to the IFRS Foundation, to SSB, they are covering the general, and then S2 is the climate standard. We have 5 environmental standards. So in that way, we are perhaps, well, I don't know if we are allowed to say, but are advanced in the world by developing all these standards and adopting all these standards.
Excellent.
And we have still a lot of work to do. We are working on the sector standards. So after the summer, some of these exposure drafts will come out. So that is what everybody is also waiting for. And I think you will have Elisa a little bit later about SMEs. So perhaps that's the other topic, is the bridge to Elisa.
Absolutely. And we will zoom in particularly to non-listed SMEs today during our webinar. And maybe if you've, from your experience, already spotted some of the key challenges for the non-listed SMEs when it comes to sustainability reporting practice, especially maybe within Europe, and also whether there is a demand from SMEs to help them with some kind of tools that could navigate them through these challenges. If you could guide us through this, that would be excellent.
Well, there is a clear demand for the voluntary SME standard, probably more than for the listed SME standard. Also, there are not that many listed SMEs, to be honest with you. The listed SME standard we are required to prepare under the CSRD, whereas the voluntary SME standard is not part of the CSRD. It says already voluntary, so it will not be mandatory. Nevertheless, there is a lot of demand, also political demand, to move, because SMEs are, of course, the backbone of the economy. So to help them as well on the sustainability route, and therefore the voluntary SME standard is really important to develop. You know as well that SMEs get all these questionnaires from banks, from other companies, and they get many, and they have to complete them. So the idea is with the voluntary SME standards that will replace, once they do the reporting under that standard, that then there is one thing that they provide to all and don't have to do all kind of specific questionnaires. That is sort of the aim. The Commission has asked EFRAG to have the draft standards ready before the end of the year, so by the end of November. So we have accelerated our process, and without doubt, Elisa will tell a bit about that. We also did field tests with companies, with SMEs, to find out what are the issues, where is it complex, because this is an exposure draft that we have out for both. Still, the deadline is the 21st of May. Thereafter, we look at all the input we get, and we decide then, that is to say, ultimately our board, but it goes to our sustainability reporting tech, based on all the feedback that we are getting, both from the feed test and from the comment letters, what should be changed, because it's of course important that it's widely accepted and to be used in a pragmatic way and so on. So we have to know what people tell us from the practice. So that's a bit where we are, but Elisa will tell you much more about all the details of the VSME standard, how it's constructed and how it's derived and how it's related to the main standards, the main 12 standards that we have.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Saskia. And I see Elisa has joined us. I have very last question for you. I'm curious to know whether you would be in a position in the future to support SMEs with the practical application once there is the legislative step completed by the European legislator, and to formalize the voluntary standard. I would like to know if you need to have a mandate from the European Commission for this kind of market building initiative potentially, or this is something that EFRAG can or is looking for doing in support of upscaling the sustainability reporting for particularly non-listed SMEs.
Well, EFRAG is currently what we call a Q&A platform where people can put questions to us about the detailed questions they have, the things that are not clear or they cannot find or whatever. Those questions are considered. If these questions are part of the directive, then we are not responding to them. So we have different way to respond to them. So that same support, that same platform will serve the SME standards as well. Now, will we be individually helping companies as advisors? The answer is no, we are not. We have no staff for that, and we are not able to do that. That will belong to the accountancy profession, to other people, advisors that can help them in detail. But we are very ready, and we do actually present a lot at events as this, but also other events more SME oriented, where we give details about the standard. So we want to support the standard, we give implementation support, but we cannot be individual advisors to the companies. So do we need a special mandate of the Commission for that? No, I think the fact that the Commission very much pushes as well to have the voluntary SME standard means that it's a very important initiative for them. It's a voluntary standard, it's developed by EFRAG, but the expectation and the hope is that the Commission will support this voluntary SME standard. It's not part of the legislation, but you know, the Commission has as well other means like recommendations or action plans, or to mention it in other ways to give it support, not the same support as the standards, but still a support that it's, in a way supported by the Commission and show the importance of it.
Absolutely, excellent. So there is a will from the European Commission and certainly from the politicians to support SMEs in this sustainability reporting. And I thank you very much, Saskia, for being with us today, this morning, to give us a context, to let us understand a little bit the role of EFRAG, of yourself, and how what to expect in the future. And I pass the word to my colleague Stephanie Smielowski. She's a policy advisor at Impact Europe. She's diving in to the work of the voluntary standard for non-listed SMEs, and she will guide the conversation with Elisa and Antoine going forward. And please, if you have questions, do not hesitate to ask. You can provide it in the Q&A box and also in the chat box, and we will address those questions at the very end. I'm passing it to Stephanie. Thank you very much, Saskia.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you, Saskia, for the great intervention. And now we're going to start with the panel discussion, where we're going to dive a little bit more on the voluntary standards, but also see what are the opportunities for the impact space. And this is also a timely webinar as EFRAG is undergoing a consultation of the standards until Monday, so 21st of May. So I hope this conversation helps with the reflections and potentially for you all to join in contributing to the consultation. So I would like to just quickly introduce our speakers today. Elisa Bevilacqua is the Senior Sustainability Technical Manager at EFRAG. She's the responsible at EFRAG in designing the voluntary standards under the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. Thank you, Elisa, for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to explain a little bit more this work for our constituents. And we also have with us today Antoine Demartel. He's the Associate Director and Chief Financial Officer at Impact. Impact is an organization fostering sustainable impacts finance initiatives by fostering advisory, consulting, and management services. Thank you also for joining us today. So I would like to kickstart with Elisa. In order to lay a solid foundation for our discussion on the voluntary standards, could you please provide an introduction for our audience who might be less familiar with it, such as the key aspects, objectives? So I'll pass the word to you. Thank you, Elisa, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us here and giving us the opportunity to deep dive into the VSME standard exposure draft, which is currently under public consultation. And this is also an occasion to invite all of you to participate and get involved in this public consultation, in particular as user of the potential user of the standards. The investor community is has an important role to shape the VSME. In fact, you mentioned, Stephanie, the VSME, but actually as part of the CSRD mandate, but actually I just want to underline the fact that we are here outside the scope of the CSRD in the sense that this is a voluntary tool that stems from a market need, actually, that was identified both by the SME community, let's say, and the banking, large corporate, but also recognized by the European Commission that indicated in the SMEs relief package of end of last year, the fact that VSME could be an important tool, not only to provide a simplified, a simplified tool, again, sorry for repeating the word, but a simplified tool for SMEs, but also to relieve them from the burden of answering many different questionnaires, as it is the case today, unfortunately, that they get exposed to a number of uncoordinated information requests on ESG data that are very costly, time-consuming, and difficult for SMEs to answer. This is the value, really, of the VSME, to provide a single entry point, both for the preparers, so the SMEs, but also for the users, so the banks, the investors, the head of supply chains, with a minimum data set that allows fulfilling the needs of data, but also to empower SMEs and take the first steps in the sustainability journey. So this is really being constructed in a way, of course, within the scope of the CSRD, and looking as well at the coherency and consistency of the ESRS system, together with the standard for listed SMEs that is actually stemming from the CSRD. So we have looked at the various components of the CSRD, but also really targeted this market need and enhanced to a maximum the proportionality. This is what we see in the slide. So adapting the tool to the complexity, scale, let's say sophistication degrees of the small and medium-sized enterprise, considering that the micro enterprise are also in the scope of the VSME, which has forced us really to think of maximum proportionality, adaptation with the modular system, ensuring, however, a consistency all over the ESRS building blocks. I hope this clarifies the role of this standard.
Thank you, Elisa. And could you explain a little bit more for us, how did you solve the challenge for simplifying and putting more proportionality in the standards for the non-listed SMEs, such as the modular approach? And maybe we can go to the next slides for Elisa to explain a little bit more the structure of the standards for our audience. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, it's important. The modular approach is really it's really being conceived to fit the needs of those very different type of undertakings in scope. So catering for the needs of the micro, below 10 enterprises, up to the medium, up to 249 employees, which comprises a very diversified population. So that was the logic that we applied. We have also did an intense work of outreach. So we have confronted our methodology, of course, within the EFRAG bodies, but also outside, discussing with the SMEs organization, with banks, with the large undertakings, We've conducted an extensive benchmarking of existing tools for SMEs in the ESG space. And furthermore, what is important, I think, from the market perspective and evidence-based design of the standard is the fact that we have analyzed all the possible initiatives that we could identify back in the summer of 2023, meaning questionnaires from central banks, national banking associations, international initiatives for supply chain procurement, ESG management. So all the various requests of information that were addressed or are currently addressed to SMEs, but all those initiatives that have behind them thousands of SMEs and hundreds of users and both in terms of banks and large corporates as clients of SMEs. So this has provided us, as I mentioned, with an evidence-based approach where we could identify the most recurring requests in ESG data requests addressed to SMEs, and on the other hand, reconcile them, of course, as I said, with the ESRS and with the CSRD parameters. And this has led us so to the building of the three modules that composes the BSME, the basic module, which is really the starting point, the entry point for the for all the undertakings potentially using the BSME, and what we consider the target for the micro undertaking. Here we have simplified and lowered the barrier for entry for those, especially for the micro undertakings, by removing the concept of materiality and replacing it with the applicability concept. So many of the disclosure are defined as if applicable, meaning that we define the circumstances that trigger the disclosure. This is really to orient and limit the judgment to the minimum, which being aware that materiality is a more sophisticated exercise for an entry point level. This contains 11 disclosure, which ranges across the ESG spectrum and are mainly metrics. So this is the basic module. Then on top of the basic module, the undertaking can decide to use also the narrative, policy action target module, and or the business partner module. So the narrative, the policy action and targets is to be used when the undertaking has already policies, actions, or targets in place, meaning that the expectation is the more mature or at least experienced undertaking that has already a level of ESG thinking in place and addresses a number of sustainability matters. And this is why in this module we have incorporated materiality analysis, even if we try to simplify very much the language. And really the language simplification has been an effort in particular for the basic module, but also for the narrative as well. A big component, let's say, of the simplification has been the language and the terminology. In this narrative, we have 5 disclosure, and the list of sustainability matters is the same as the one for the large undertakings and serves as guide, as a checkpoint for the undertaking for the disclosure. Then the business partner module is to be used by the undertakings that face ESG requests by their business counterpart. Again, business counterparts mainly are the banks, the investors, and the head of supply chains. And as I explained, we have identified those common requests through the analysis of current questionnaires already in use. But we have also drawn the conclusion that those are coinciding basically almost entirely with the SFDR Table 1, the benchmark, and the BA Pillar 3 indicators. What does it mean? This is the sustainable finance indicators, which have become kind of proxies, established indicators, ESG and ESG data requested by the business counterparts to the SMEs as part of ESG risk management, ESG procurement. So they go beyond the pure sustainable finance regulatory value. They, of course, there is also that dimension associated to it, in particular for the EBA Pillar 3, because the banks have to fulfill certain regulation, and this is why they ask certain ESG information to their counterparts and to SMEs. But also the SFDR dimension is important, both from the regulatory investor point of view, but also, as I said, at large, as established indicators recognized in the market for wider ESG or ESG risk management, and even at large, let's say, management or business purposes linked to the ESG or sustainability matters management, both for large companies and financial institutions. Here we have to have disclosure, which are also implying, which are under a mix of materiality assessment and applicability, in the sense that we tried as well to facilitate the applicability of this module by giving and orienting and triggering the under certain circumstances the disclosure, so to facilitate and guide SMEs also in this module, which is by nature more technical and hence had limited possibility for simplification of language in this case compared to the other two. So this is the full overview of the modules with the high degree of flexibility in the application and combination as long as the basic module is fulfilled.
Thank you, Elisa, for this very comprehensive introduction. I think this gives us a solid foundation to continue the discussion. And so now I would like to ask Antoine, drawing from your extensive experience helping asset managers in implementing impact and sustainable business practices, but also reporting, what is your view on the standards? Do you find it a valuable resource for simplifying sustainability reporting to non-listed SMEs in the impact space more in specific? You're muted.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone, and thank you for your question, Stephanie. The answer is yes to your question. For me, it's yes. Is it a valuable resource? Definitely, and Elisa has explained how it can help. I will focus on three aspects which is driving this answer. The first thing, it was one of the questions given to Saskia before, is the amount of educational material or in terms of definition, the enlightenment that it will enable for the entire market. Here I can compare to other tools, so coming from the impact finance. If I look at the IRIS tool that we use, developed by the GIN, here we are speaking with a much larger population. So of course this standard is not part of CSRD, but it's really built based on it. So a lot of documentation have been created, not only by the EFRAG, but also by all the other stakeholders. So I'm thinking about the Big Four. So one will be in charge of preparing the assurance report on this standard. All the existing community have developed a lot of documentation, webinars have been taken, and an entire profession, I mean the accounting profession as a whole, is also looking into it, incorporating those aspects in the education materials. and it's only the beginning. So yes, we with this tool, we are able to have a common definition, set of common definition on typical standards and of documentation that SME do not necessarily have the time to develop or look into by themselves. So this guidance is really helpful in providing a consistent and comparable reporting. The second reason, I would say, is also linked to the fact that this standard doesn't come alone. It's linked to CSRD, it's linked to the EU finance, sustainable finance package, which is really interesting. But as Saskia mentioned, it also to other standards. So we can think about the SSB work or also. What does it mean? It means that even if the SMEs are reporting to stakeholders outside the EU, the concept, the definition, and the type of metrics that we're going to report are going to be similar, avoiding this extremely costly process of reporting under different standards with different definition. So instead of doing a double or triple reporting, we'll come with this one single set of metrics or this single reporting, which can be used with different jurisdiction, even outside EU. And the third one, which is linked to the materiality, and one of the aspects in this standard is the fact that the materiality definition that each entity needs to do is not only based on the individual view of each entity, but it's also encouraged to be done in collaboration with the main stakeholders, so investors, banks, suppliers, clients. That's those stakeholders that you can engage with, not only when you're reporting, but before that, when you're assessing your own materiality, which means that this tool creates much more connection with the value chain and incorporates during the preparation of the reporting these aspects that will report ultimately thinking in advance. If I take the impact word, that's really important because if you think about the impact investors, 2/3 of them, when they define the impact strategy, are actually basing themselves on the data available by their investees, which means that the investee, in collaboration with the investors, can take these standards, build on the matrix information which are set, but also discuss what are the material components that I need to incorporate.
Thank you, Antoine. This was a very comprehensive view. Thank you for the key important points. Indeed, the standard really helps supports the SMEs to really join their to be able to have their sustainability journey with more guidance, but also reply to the data requirements of their business partners, be them investors, companies, and banks. And so I would like to get back to Elisa for another question. While many SMEs are still in the process of transitioning to the sustainable economy, some are already beyond implementing sustainable practices, such as those aiming to intentionally create positive and measurable social and environmental impacts. These impact-driven SMEs really report usually on their positive impacts and on their impact practices, let's say, to their investors. And that's really what most impact investors also look at when it comes to their investees, but also looking for investable companies. So in light of this, I wanted to ask you, Elisa, how can this impact SMEs showcase their positive impact within the framework of the voluntary standards? Do you see a value in using the standards for this purpose, for showing more the positive impacts related to their business model? Thank you. I think you're muted. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I did not manage to unmute. Thanks for the question. But before I answer, I just want to touch on and rebound on what Antoine just said, because it's really important, and this is really a question a fundamental question of our public consultation, that we have a recognition and an acceptance from the investors community, banking community, so from the business counterpart of SMEs, that our set and our VSME covers, the minimum ESG data request, and basically very concretely that they will not, that it can credibly replace a large amount of current questionnaires. So we are aware that there may be sectoral dimension that will have to be covered by specific question data needs, but let's say if the idea is that we would manage to replace this substantial part of this question. So thanks for that acknowledgement. And now moving back on the impact, which is probably also another confirmation of the potential of the VSME for SMEs that would like to report on their positive impact. We mentioned that there is, of course, a focus on the principal adverse impact that there is, so that there is let's say the negative impact dimension is built in. Of course, this is also in line with the CSRD provision on SME, or at least on the listed SME standards. So this was also an important point for us to cover for the alignment, but there is also the important dimension of the positive impact, and also both from the impact perspective and from the financial opportunities, of course, risk and opportunities perspective. So this is an important framework in that sense. And as you can see also in the indicators, we didn't have the time, of course, to show, but there is both in all the modules, basically, there is the possibility to show through the standardized metric, of course, the impact and the measurement for the impact achievement. And then in the narrative, of course, this is the module where there is more freedom in explaining and in assessing this positive impact dimension, and as I mentioned already, the financial also opportunities. So this is I think from that perspective, each of the modules allows with a focus as well on the narrative to cover this dimension.
Thank you very much, Elisa. And now I'll get back to Antoine on this point, so we can continue this discussion. So from your point of view, do you see the potential of using the standards for reporting more positive impacts, or would you see the needs for some additional questions on positive impact? What are your views in general on how this tool can be used for the visibility of impact-driven SMEs, but also for the data needs of impacting investors? Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Elisa. So yes, indeed, this tool gives the freedom or gives the possibility to report on the positive impact, even if the standard itself, if you really look at it, and it's really the case for the entire EU sustainable finance package. It's really linked much more on risk and on the do not significantly harm, but thanks to the narrative, you have the possibility to, and some of the KPIs, you have the possibility to express it, even if not the area of focus. So I would say, yes, you can. That being said, there are only three things, I'm going three ideas where we could extend, or which will be a consequence of these standards. First, because there will a very large number of companies will report with those KPIs following these standards, we'll have the possibility to analyze data on sustainability at a much larger scale, which means that new benchmark, new comparison will be possible between companies, which will enable impact companies such as ours to much more articulate where we outperform. So we'll be able to speak much more from performance perspective, saying we are achieving this target above what is the criteria, instead of looking at it much more like a compliance exercise, which can be the case today. So that's comparison is the first way to show the positive impact. The second one, coming from the impact finance industry, which is not necessarily so articulated, but once again, the room is there, just that it's not mentioned, is the idea of a theory of change that we have in impact finance, which is not so much articulated. So it's really about the way, what type of activities or intervention will lead to the target, and explain how we're going to achieve our ultimate goal. So while the standard is really focused on the materiality, on the how much with the KPIs, or what we're trying to achieve with the target, there is this idea that we have in the Fourier chat, which is a bit the how do you intend to achieve, and saying if the how is not applied, then there is a risk or there is an opportunity over your target, and that's the positive impact that we are looking for ourselves to use. And the final one that we saw in some reports is a bit about the business purpose of an entity, the positive that impact entities have. How can you explain your business purpose? I was saying in French, the raison d'être, which is one of the regulatory component, one of the possibility for French entities, and that could be a positive addition to the standard which can be added and which could be targeted mainly impact-driven entities.
Thank you, Antoine. Thank you for sharing a bit more the impact practices and how the tool could be used to show more the positive impact of SMEs, and how to be more useful as well to investors as well, from the ESG compliance, but also from the positive impact data they need for screening investable companies. So I want to continue with you for a last question for you, since we are talking about the data users as well. Given the voluntary nature of this reporting standard, it is crucial that all business partners, be investors, banks, or companies, will adopt this standard to streamline reporting for SMEs and enable them to have a unified reporting, right? So in light of this, I would like to ask you, do you believe this standard has the potential to replace data requests from various business partners? At the same time, it will provide them the relevant data for their own reporting or for their own data needs? Going back to this point again, because I think it's a very important point, considering that also impact investors are within the impact funds, but also they could be in corporations as well, or foundations. So I really want to see your experience on that. Please go ahead.
Sure. I will use the experience on the impact finance, and I will also look at my financial background, because standards in the financial world, I mean, financial standards exist for a while, and we have been able to test how it goes in terms of standard reporting. So my answer is obviously yes, and that was really the intent of the EFRAG, and yes, this standard is going to replace a large part of the questionnaire. Thanks, and it's explained thanks to the standardization, thanks to the education as well. It will replace in terms of standard reporting the type of generic question that we get. And here again, I will quote one of the GIN reports, which was explaining that 71% of the investors were using in their own questionnaire generally accepted impact metrics. That's really what the EFRAG has built with this questionnaire. What is interesting as well, which will push as well for that, is part of the standards is trying to combine the sustainable aspect and the financial aspects, and which means that it will create a new model based on both, trying to link both the sustainable performance with the financial performance. It will lead to the creation of new models that we can see in the impact world, where both criteria are set. And it means also that we'll push for the creation of new evaluation model for entities, and even more a new valuation model as such. That being said, looking at what is happening with the financial reports by themselves, where there are those standards which exist for a while, we can see that the financial statements are used and are always requested in due diligence questionnaire of any kind, but they never come alone. All entities tend to come with an additional set of questions, a bit more granular, a bit more focused on their activities, because clearly the strategy or the materiality view of one entity is not necessarily the same as the one of its investees and of its clients. Or suppliers or other stakeholders. So quite often a separate set of information, a bit more detailed, a bit more focused comes, and that will mean that there will be probably additional question coming. The more detailed or the more comprehensive the sustainability reporting will be, then or the more preliminary work during the materiality will be done, and the less question will be there. And that's a bit the challenge for the entity to ensure that they take into account the need of the stakeholders. Once again, I just mentioned this Gini report. So on top of the 71% of investors using generally accepted impact metrics, 66 of them, so 2/3, are also using their own specific impact targets on top of the generic one. I think that it reflects the situation that we will face once this standard is implemented.
Thank you, Antoine. And conscious of time, and I know Elisa might need to disconnect soon. Elisa, I'll give you just the chance for in 2 minutes explain a little bit the timeline for the consultation and some keywords you would like, or key ideas you would like to bring about the consultation, and if people and SMEs can already start using the standard or not. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Now that was interesting as well for me to hear the feedback of Antoine. I think we have to, and this is important part of the consultation, we're trying to onboard really the 98% of the companies in Europe, which is the micro SMEs. So there are some, the one you mentioned, that are already a bit more advanced in their impact and in their ESG journey, but the tool is also to allow the ones that are taking really the first step. So of course you can't, there are the various degrees, and this is why the modularity helps, as well to cater for the different needs. But I get that probably this will be a type of answer we may get from the public consultation, that for very specific investors or specific type of needs, there may be also additional data requests or more in that. But I think this would be acceptable then for the investees that are really targeting and are really trying to appeal, this type of portfolios and have a specific target, a strategic target in terms of appealing impact investors. So I think this is very fair, and it makes sense in the logic as well of the standard. What we're trying to understand now with this consultation and with field tests, and this is why I have to leave you, because we are running a series of field tests today and in this week, actually, both with the preparers and the users. And we're really trying to have an evidence-based approach to move forward in the development of the standard, from passing from the exposure draft to the technical advice to the commission. And this is the timeline that we're going to follow. So after those, the analysis of the public consultation, I remind you the deadline is the 21st of May for the public consultation. We are going to collect and analyze the feedbacks. We are already analyzing the feedbacks, very interesting, from the field tests, running those workshops. In parallel to this, there is also a cost-benefit analysis, which is externalized. This is run by consultant on the overall package of the LSME and VSME ED, so that will be accompanying as well the final technical advice. Then in the beginning of end of June, beginning of July, and for the whole summer period, we will have the redeliberations, the proposals for the redeliberations at the EFRAG, SRTAG, and the Sustainability Reporting Board. this will be based, of course, on the feedback received from the public consultation and the field test. Towards the end of the year, we aim at delivering the final advice to the European Commission, both, by the way, on the LSME, so the standard for the listed SMEs, and the voluntary, the VSME standard. So this is the timeline. So important to have feedback. There is various degree, of course. What we can see is that there is a various degree of readiness, and this is not a surprise. But again, what we really would like is to have a common tool that would be used and replace to a maximum extent the current data request, used as a basis for the business partners for exchanging the data, and then that will grow and develop, of course, with a learning curve in the coming years, ready for use, hopefully. Of course, we don't know exactly how the European Commission, what will be the tool. You know that for the moment there has been, for example, I talk about this, is very basic, but translation. It's an important dimension. Of course, we're talking about the SMEs, so they need also tools in their own language. For them, for now, with the exposure draft, there have been kind of national translation more or less organized. We have not, of course, they are unofficial, but they've been helping a lot in the field test. So the European Commission, when this will become whatever the tool that will be applied, there would be the language dimension will also be considered. So there will be supposedly the available languages, and that also would facilitate the uptake. But you know, in the meantime, some are already using the standard. Some online platform have already replaced in a test mode our VSME with their current questionnaire. So there is a lot of developments going on. So I'm sorry, I will have to leave you, but I hope, but I would like to thank you very much for this opportunity, and I hope it was useful.
Thank you, Elisa. Thank you for joining us. This was an incredible, comprehensive presentation, and I'm sure our audience really appreciates that as well. And we'll let you go. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, so we can continue maybe just for one Q&A, since we ran out of time, unfortunately, but we would like to give Antoine the opportunity to answer one quick 1-minute question. So if you could give us 1 minute, what is your take for the future of sustainability reporting in the EU? What's your desire for the future of sustainability reporting and how that can become a better tool for impact investors?
I think that if there is one take or one wish that I would have is the fact that sustainability reporting gets more integrated with the financial one in the decision making of the companies. Right now, it's I'm not necessarily speaking with the sector, but right now it's quite often something taken on the side or with the availability of data. If we can have a more comprehensive population answering to those questions or reporting on the sustainability, it will become more and more a part of the decision making of each entity in a much more integrated way. Compared to what we have before, mainly financial data available on companies. Those two sets of information will probably slightly revise the way entities are looked at, but also how we define performance of all companies and the impact over the society, environment, and all the stakeholders.
Thank you, Antoine. I guess we all agree to those wishes as well. And Unfortunately, we won't have time to continue with more questions, and since Elisa had to leave, any questions for EFRAG, we will follow up. We will send them to EFRAG and get back to the speakers as well. And this recording will be available in our website as well. And I would like to thank all the participants and all the speakers for joining us today. And I'll give the room for Jana to say some last minutes presentation of her webinar later today. Please, Jana, go ahead. Can you unmute now?
Thank you very much. I would also like to join Stephanie in thanking everyone and reiterate that we will try to answer all the questions and follow up. The only reminder that I have for you is that there is another webinar which relates to sustainability reporting later today, focus on SFDR, that we are going to hold together with Kaya. So you're most welcome to join us at that webinar as well. And we wish you a wonderful week, hopefully sunny throughout the whole week, and we'll keep the conversation going about the voluntary sustainability standard for non-listed SMEs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.